Imagine a quiet farmhouse, standing alone between fields of snow and forest shadows. Germany, 1922. The kind of silence that feels wrong. The kind of silence that remembers. The place was called Hinterkaifeck, a small, isolated farm near the village of Gribern, and what happened there would become one of the darkest and most chilling mysteries in European history. A story so brutal, so unexplained, that even today people whisper that the farm itself was cursed. It all began with the Gruber family. Andreas Gruber, the strict and cold patriarch, his wife, Cecilia, quiet and obedient, their widowed daughter, Victoria, and her two children, little Cecilia, 7 years old, and baby Joseph, just 2. They lived far from everyone, deep in the countryside, where neighbors were miles away. That isolation made them feel safe, but it also made them perfect targets. About 6 months before the murders, Andreas started noticing strange things. He found footprints in the snow leading toward the house, but never away. He heard footsteps in the attic when no one else was home. A set of house keys disappeared. Then, the family's newspaper began showing up from the wrong town, even though no one had subscribed. When he told his neighbors, they just laughed it off. Probably kids. Andreas. But Andreas wasn't the kind of man to scare easily. He'd fought in wars. He'd worked the same soil for decades. If he said something was wrong, something was wrong, cunt. On March 31st, 1922, life on the farm continued as usual. The maid, Maria Baumgartner, had just arrived her first day working there. The previous maid had quit suddenly, claiming the house was haunted. She said she'd been hearing whispering voices from empty rooms. That night, no one would ever leave Hinterkaifeck alive. When the family didn't show up for church that Sunday, neighbors got suspicious. Victoria was usually very punctual. She sang in the choir. So, a few men from the nearby village decided to check on them. When they reached the farm, everything was quiet. No smoke from the chimney. No one answered the door. The cows were mooing, unfed. The dog barked relentlessly, tied up in the barn. So they went inside the barn. And that's when they saw it. 4 bodies: Andreas, Cecilia, the child, Victoria, and old Cecilia, brutally murdered with a pickaxe, stacked on top of each other, covered in straw. Inside the house, they found baby Joseph dead in his crib, and the maid, Maria, killed in her bed. 6 people, one night. No survivors. The horror didn't stop there. The murderer, whoever it was, had stayed in the house for days afterward. The cows had been milked. The food had been eaten. Smoke was seen rising from the chimney even after the murders. Whoever killed them slept in the same rooms, ate their meals, and cared for the animals, as if they belonged there. And that S where the story starts to dig deep, because this wasn't just a random murder. This was something personal. The investigators soon uncovered the family's dark secrets. Andreas Gruber wasn't the kind, hard-working farmer people thought he was. He had been abusive, especially toward his daughter, Victoria. In fact, there were rumors and, later, legal records that he had an incestuous relationship with her. Victoria's son, Joseph, might not have been fathered by her late husband. He might have been Andreas's child. That revelation changed everything. Now the crime didn't just look like a massacre. It looked like revenge, or punishment, or maybe something even darker. The police had theories, dozens of them. Was it a jealous lover, a rejected suitor, a stranger passing through, or maybe someone they all knew? But the strangest part, nothing was stolen. The house was full of valuables, untouched. It wasn't about money. And yet, the brutality was overwhelming. Each victim's skull was crushed. The child's hair was pulled out in clumps as if she had watched everything before being killed. Can you imagine that silence after the screams? The animals restless in the barn, the wind howling through the broken windows, and the murderer sitting in their kitchen waiting for morning. What makes the Hinterkaifeck Murders so haunting isn't just the blood or the mystery, but the humanity in it, the raw, uncomfortable truth that evil doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes it's born inside the home, inside the family, inside the people we trust. Even today, that farmhouse is gone demolished years later, but locals say when you walk by the field, you can still hear faint crying. A child's voice, calling out for help, cut short by the wind. And that's only the beginning, because the deeper investigators went, the darker the story became. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for part 2. 40 bodies were found. The entire region of Bavaria fell into a quiet panic. A killer was out there, and no one knew who it was. The Gruber farmhouse was sealed off, but people whispered that every time someone stepped inside, they could still smell the faint metallic scent of blood. Even the police refused to stay too long. But what haunted them most was not what they saw, but what they couldn't explain. When investigators returned to the scene, they realized the killer had been methodical, almost comfortable. He'd covered the bodies neatly, locked the doors, and lived there for several days, milking the cows, feeding the chickens, and cooking meals. That eerie detail fascinated everyone. It wasn't just murder. It was control. It was as if the killer was trying to replace the family. Who would do that? Who would kill 6 people and then sleep in their beds? At first, suspicion fell on Lawrence Schlittenbauer, a neighbor who had once been close to Victoria. Rumors said he might have been baby Joseph's real father. He was one of the first people to enter the barn and discover the bodies, but people noticed he seemed oddly calm. He even unlocked the door to the house, as if he already knew where the key was hidden. When asked how he knew, he shrugged. Maybe I just guessed. That one sentence fueled decades of speculation. Some say Lorenz was heartbroken. Victoria had ended their affair, and he wanted revenge. Others say he killed them to hide the truth about Joseph's paternity. But there was never proof, just whispers, and the feeling that he knew more than he ever said. Then there were other theories. A drifter passing through Bavaria, a war veteran with trauma, a stranger who stumbled on the farm and snapped. But again, nothing was stolen, no footprints leading away. And the dog, loyal and fierce, had barked only after the murders. So whoever did it, the dog must have known them. That single detail changes everything. It means the killer wasn't a stranger. It was someone they trusted. Someone who could walk right up to them and swing the pickaxe without warning. Quite when you think about it. What makes this story truly terrifying isn't just that a family was killed. It's how familiar it feels. We all know what it's like to feel safe at home. To close the door at night and think, nothing can touch me here. But for the Grubers, home was the place that destroyed them. And that plays with your mind, because it reminds us how thin the line is between normal life and absolute horror. What was the killer thinking, sitting by their fireplace after the murders? Did he feel guilt? Did he feel nothing? Or worse, did he feel peace? That's the unsettling thing about Hinterkaifeck. There are no clean heroes, no pure victims, just human beings tangled in secrets. Andreas Gruber was abusive, controlling, violent, a man with a dark reputation. But did that mean he deserved what happened? Of course not. Yet it complicates the story. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a story about good and evil. Maybe it was about pain passed down, generation after generation, until someone finally snapped. When you strip away the mystery, what's left is something horribly human. Fear, shame, anger, obsession. And that's what makes this case timeless. It's not about monsters under the bed. It's about the monsters inside us. Over the years, new evidence came and went. In the 1950s, investigators tried reopening the case, even exhuming the skulls of the victims, and sending them to clairvoyants for psychic examination. No answers came. Then in 2007, German police quietly reviewed all the files again with modern techniques, DNA comparisons, all of it. They reached a conclusion, but they never revealed it publicly. They said the suspect was known to investigators, but since he was long dead, there was no reason to name him, so the truth was buried again, just like the family, under 6 wooden crosses in a quiet graveyard. And that, maybe, is the cruelest twist of all. Because somewhere in Bavaria's history books, someone's name is written in ink, the killer of Hinterkaifeck, and we'll never know who. Even now, over 100 years later, locals still avoid the place where the farmhouse once stood. The land is empty, just fields and the faint outline of the foundation. But sometimes, travelers who pass by at night say they see a dim lantern glow, moving slowly between the trees. And if you listen closely, you might hear the sound of a pickaxe striking wood, over and over, echoing through the fog. Maybe it's the wind, maybe it's memory, or maybe it's the murderer who never left.